That's right, everybody. Welcome back. Pleb Underground. I am your host, Phil, and yeah, we are going to dive right into it. But guess what? Before we do, I promised a fellow viewer, Copper Nixon from Twitter, that I would make an announcement about the episode that I did about Peter Thiel, right? And his new crypto bank, which is totally surprising, right? I made a mistake, right? When I was explaining the whole JRR token lore, I had said that Smog was staying in the Lonely Mountain, and in the Misty Mountain, and it was actually the Lonely Mountain, and I had pronounced Erebor instead of Erebor. So big apologies. Anyways, all right, let's move on because we've got a couple of stories to take a look at. Seems that there's some weirdness going on with some op-return scam. It kind of smells like some Craig Wright or some Calvin Eyre effery. We're going to take a look into it. It's kind of funny. They're referencing an old investment firm, right? Solomon Brothers. It's just kind of weird. Also, we're going to take a look at how Scott Bessett is just saying the quiet part out loud, and it's kind of funny. Also, normally I give shit to the Bitcoin treasury companies. You guys know me, right? Like I can't help it. But you know what? I think Metaplanet's trying to do something. I'm not saying that I'm supporting them at all. I'm just saying this might not be so bad. Anyways, we are going to dive into it. But before we do, quick word from Pleb Underground sponsor, and we will be right back to dive into the stories. Here we go. Head on over to Archimedes Emporium. They make absolutely beautiful Bitcoin branded products. They just dropped their first one. It is the solid aluminum Bitcoin clock. I had to get my hands on it so that I could show it to you guys. Take a look. Really, really nice piece. Beautiful craftsmanship. Head on over to archamp.co. The link is going to be in the show notes. That is Archimedes Emporium. Head on over there. All right, let's kick it off. Here we go. Some comments here on CNBC with Scott and Joe Kernan.
Lunches like with Jay Powell these days?
Well, it's breakfast, and we have a lively exchange. We do a home game and away game. He comes to Treasury. I go to the Fed. The Fed's food is much better, so I enjoy breakfast over there. And we have very lively and far-reaching discussions with a lot of mutual respect.
They can spend as much money as they want on breakfast. That's the Fed. They're printing. It's like anything goes. It's like
they're not worried about egg prices over there.
Sometimes you got to wonder if you're just being gaslit, right? So sometimes, like, you say to yourself, are these people really laughing in my face? Like, is that really what's happening? You can't help but feel that. You really can't. Anyways, yeah, the quiet part out loud. We are not surprised. Okay, moving on to some weirdness, some weirdness here. This was reported from BitMEX research, and essentially, here we go. There appears to be an ongoing Bitcoin scam occurring. Someone is sending old 2011 era Bitcoin address with balances transactions with an op return output. Now, let's take a look at what the op return actually says, right? So what's happening is that these older addresses that have Bitcoin balances, they are being sent transactions, right? They're being sent like a dust transaction or whatever it is. And in there's a message in the op return. So let's take a quick look at this, right? And essentially the message, which is right down here, okay, sorry about that. The message over here is essentially that you need to go to this specific website, right? This Solomon Brothers website, which is an older investment firm, very well-known investment firm. And you got to go take a look at this notice, okay? And obviously this notice has some very strange wording. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this. I genuinely do feel bad if somebody has actually fallen for this, that has a 2011 era address that saw this and was like, oh, I better go and follow these instructions. I mean, I know that this seems like it might not be a scam, but I don't see how that's possible that it doesn't seem to be a scam. So here we go. This digital wallet appears to be lost or abandoned. It's just an assumption. Our client has taken constructive possession of it. What the fuck does that mean? What does constructive possession of it? And seeks to determine if there is a bona fide owner. Well, I don't understand. The client has taken constructive possession, whatever the hell that means. Okay. So anyways, look, if there's any actual OGs that are dumb enough to fall for this, please don't. I mean, this is just absolute nonsense and garbage. It just screams, BSV and CSW stuff. You know what I mean? It's like going after these older addresses. It's comical and embarrassing. So please do not fall for it. Not worth it. Yeah. Solomon Brothers isn't representing any kind of client that is trying to constructively take possession of your Bitcoin. Anyways, all right. Moving on to this story. So here we go. This is the Metaplanet stuff, right? So the Metaplanet CEO Simon says they plan to borrow against their Bitcoin to buy profitable businesses. Okay. So look, I mean, it's no secret that I'm not a huge fan of the Bitcoin treasury companies. And let me be specific about this. I am not a fan of businesses that simply dilute their shares or issue bonds, which essentially just dilutes your shares into the future because the bondholder has an option to either cash out at some point in the future or take the shares and sell them. And they essentially, part of their agreement is that they purchased the shares or they got the bond, which allowed them to have the shares at a certain price, which obviously when they sell it in the future, provided that the business executes on its plan, they're going to be profitable, right? They're going to be very profitable. I don't have an issue with that. I'm not allergic to people making money or anything like that, right? Like BitPain is still crying about Predator today. But the point I'm trying to make is that if a business is actually going to recognize, right? Like if they recognize, hey, look, it's good that we're holding Bitcoin, right? It's good that our ice cube isn't melting. But we still need to actually generate operating revenue, right? Like we talk about being anti-fragile, right? There was this whole, back in like 2017, 2018, when people were really enamored by Nassim Taleb, and I'm not making fun of them. I was also enamored by Nassim Taleb. The words he was saying were magical. I read his anti-fragile book. I read the book about the bed of Procrustes and randomness and all that good stuff, right? So we were all enamored by this stuff about it being anti-fragile. So what would be wrong with a Bitcoin business taking on that similar anti-fragility, right? Knowing that you don't make enough operating income to actually sustain the business into the future, why wouldn't you buy a business that actually makes money, that actually has positive revenue, right? Positive operating revenue. Why wouldn't you do that? It's stupid. Of course you would, because in the end, that makes you more resilient to market downturns, and it makes it possible so that you, as a Bitcoin company, can afford to hold that Bitcoin well into the future. And I mean, let's be honest, markets come in cycles. In a follow-up bull run, if a business does the right things and they're able to survive this, well, guess what? Your business is going to survive and thrive. And then all of a sudden, if you decide you want to dilute your shareholders again, well, guess what? You've got a really good story behind you to prove your survivability. And in all fairness, I don't think the businesses that don't have any positive operating revenue, I don't think their survivability is very good. I understand that they are betting on the fact that Bitcoin's price appreciation will go up faster than the interest payments that they're going to have to make. But a lot of these businesses are betting on perfect conditions. They're betting on perfect market conditions. And anybody who's paid attention to markets for any length of time knows there's always There is always bubbles. There is always busts. There's always black swans. There's always events which we don't see as black swans, which eventually, unfortunately, become black swans. So, you know what? I'm going to give a hat tip, right? Hat tip to Metaplanet for, in my eyes, attempting to to do the right thing and to possibly to bolt on a business that has positive operating cash flows. So at the very least, right? I don't think these people are evil. I don't think these businesses are evil. I understand that there are people who are trying to paint the critics of the Bitcoin treasury companies as, we're basement dwellers and we're stupid and we don't know what we're doing, all that good stuff. That's fine. But unfortunately, none of that changes the reality of a business that doesn't bring in enough money to cover their operating costs. Those businesses, right, while their shares are desirable, it's only happening in optimal markets. You need optimal markets for that. And once that goes away, because again, the market cycles are cycles of booms and busts, we're going to see who's swimming naked. Okay. And all those feel good narratives about the small, the tiny little MNAV and you're getting such a discount, all that shit's going to go out the window. Okay. Because then it's going to be survival mode and it's going to be whoever can make it and not sink like a stone. That's all it's going to be. Anyways, guys, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Have a good one. I will catch you tomorrow. And don't forget, actually, Friday, we've got Pierre Richard on. So Ulrich is going to be joining me. We're going to be sitting down, right? Pierre is a proponent of the Bitcoin treasuries. I'm a critic of the Bitcoin treasuries. Ulrich is also a critic. So we're going to have that conversation. And that should be very interesting because he's definitely better spoken than I am. So anyways, all right, guys, that's all I want to talk about today. Catch you on the next one. Peace.